Yeah. Yeah.
That Black men have to be a certain way, have to show up in vibrato, have to be strong. Baby, if you need to cry, that's a
You
human
better
function.
cry.
That don't have
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do with your gender. That don't have nothing to
Yeah.
do with those things. If you are sad or depressed, there are things you need to process, right? And so, like, giving us permission just to be whole humans and step outside of the binaries and the boxes that have been created for us to have lives that we actually love, right? And
Right.
that requires slowing down. That requires investing in ourselves, investing in
Mm-hmm.
different ways we spend our time.
Yes.
And so that's really what the podcast is seeking to do, is give people opportunities to reflect, to see themselves in us, and also
Mm-hmm.
to know that there's a community of people working on their behalf, for their wellness.
Hey everyone, hey gays. This is Juhi, one of the staff writers here at Gay Magazine, and I am so excited to have Natalie here with us. And she is a member of the committee, or the board rather, of BEAM, which is Black Emotional and Mental Health Collective. And so we do have some questions for her. We're gonna get started just really, really quickly. Lots to talk about. I'm very excited. So Natalie, go ahead and introduce yourself first before we get into the questions that we have.
What's up, community? My name is Natalie Patterson. I am the Director of Training and Programs at BEAM. We are a national training, movement building, and grant making institution dedicated to the liberation and wellness of Black and marginalized folks, which means you. We here for you, and for us. I am a poet, I'm a teaching artist, I'm all the things, and really just delighted to be in community and conversation with y'all.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, so Natalie, go ahead and just tell us a fun fact about yourself.
Okay, we're starting personal really fast.
Have to. We have to.
Fun fact, I am the person who likes to watch pimple popping videos.
Me
They
too.
they make me feel so good when it's all clean and clear. And so that tells you a little bit about me. Like, I'm into the mess as long as we cleaning it up.
Okay, okay, okay. So, what sign are you? That gives me very like, hold on, I'm gonna try and guess. That gives me mm,
Is
mm. All right. Is it like an earth sign?
It's a Scorpio, honey. It's a Scorpio. Okay. I'm a good Scorpio because I got the Pisces in there. So you
Oh,
know what I'm, okay, so
okay.
it makes
All
it
right.
different. Because I know some
Okay.
people, they be like, the Scorpios, they're the worst. But we're not if we have a little Pisces in there.
So, okay, obviously you know your chart then. So what's your sun, moon, your rising?
Okay, so now you're doing a lot because you know I got to go to the Channy app to do all that. Look, I'm not that deep. I just know I got the moon and the sun in Pisces. They got the Scorpio, and it's cute. You know what I
Okay.
mean? That's what I know.
That's some
It's a
balance
good thing.
there. Okay.
It's some
Cool, cool,
balance.
cool, cool. All right. So what was the last song that you listened to?
Ooh, well, it depends on where I am. Cause like if I'm in the house and I'm trying to get my mood right, I'm listening to
Mm,
something like more calm and just like jazzy vibes. But if I'm in the car, it's like giving, I need bass. Hotel Lobby is
mm,
one of my favorite songs to ride to in the car.
okay.
So I kind of have a range of things that I really love. Of course, the classic Sade, these kind of things. But it
Oh,
really
Shade
just
is great.
depends on the mood, you know?
Okay. I feel you. I feel you. And so you did say that you are a poet, right? So
I
if
am.
you had to pick your favorite quote from a Black poet, which would it be? What would it be?
Okay, there's too many for the favorite quote, but I will tell you, I am a lover of Nikki Giovanni. I am a lover
Mm,
of, and I really think, you know, sometimes Black authors, particularly, have had to pick a genre that they fit in. But I find beautiful poetry in Toni Morrison books. I find poetry in Bell Hooks, right?
yep.
And so I don't think it's really about having one favorite or like a single line, because depending on where you are in your life, sometimes them lines be hitting different. You know, when I was like in my
Mm-hmm.
20s, I was like, ooh, that's deep. I don't know, right? And now I'm like, ooh, I understand. I get it, boo. I know what you were saying. So I just have a love
Got you.
for folks who hold language beautifully in their mouths, and have given us an opportunity
Mm, you could
to
not
cherish
have said that any better.
to cherish them and come back to it, you know, because I think that's the most beautiful thing about poetry is you can come back to it.
Yes, definitely. So I write poetry as well. So I
Ooh.
identify very heavily with that. And we're gonna get into something that you said actually. on the podcast because I thought it was really dope. We're gonna get back there. But all right, so how did you get started with Beam? Tell us what's the origin story there.
So the origin story is I was hosting an event and our founder, Yolo Akili Robinson, happened to be on the panel. And when I tell you, it was like, those moments when you're like in third grade and you meet your new best friend across the playground and you like, oh, we finna do
We
this.
friends. Yeah, we
We
friends. Yeah.
friends. It
Hmm.
was like that moment for us is we met and I heard him talk and I said, oh yeah, that's it. And so for the last 4 years, we really have been working together. I was a consultant with Beam for many years. And over the last year have had the opportunity to come in-house and really develop and kind of reimagine what our training department and our programs and different trainings could look like. And so that's kind of the origin story. It started 4 years ago at a panel, and I said, "It's you, boo. What's up?"
And
Um,
we love
and
that. We
and
love that.
apparently the feeling was mutual.
Aw, I love that. That's wonderful. And it's always, I've had interviews with other people as well, and that like instant connection, that instant vibe. You see me, I see you, we're friends. It those are the best.
Hmm.
I think they form a very solid foundation, and that's so so wonderful to me.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so you spoke about being a consultant with Beam for years and before transitioning into your current role. So tell me about some of the about your role and like some of the responsibilities that you do with Beam now.
Yeah, so essentially, I lead all of the national programming and trainings that we do across our country, and really have the opportunity to think about what does community need now, being responsive to culture, being responsive to need, thinking of it from a partnership standpoint, and who do we collaborate with, what community organizations do we need to be funding and supporting, and I get to train and do a lot of the facilitation of those programming programs too. So I kind of have multiple hats that I wear, but essentially I'm the person who gets to sign off on what we do and don't do with our work. I'm the person who gets to innovate and bring new ideas, and really challenge the institution to be where our folks are, but also to develop new programming. Right, what we did in
Hmm.
2020 is beautiful, and we have to like continually be evolving that, and so have really gotten to look at our curriculum, but also develop new programs, and really expand some of our programs like Heart Space, which has the opportunity in 2024 to expand tremendously. And so that's
Mm.
always really exciting.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So, how would you say those roles and responsibilities that you have through Beam, how are they indicative of you as an individual? In what
Oh my
ways
God.
do those things intersect?
Well, I think it's really, it's kind of the culmination of 20 years of professional work. I've taught boys who are incarcerated. I have coached executive leaders, at some of the largest companies in the world. I've had an opportunity to do some really extraordinary things. And I think how it blends is now I get to do it for the community that I sit in, right? I get to
Mm,
think about queer folks. I get to think about Black folks. I get to think about trans folks. I get to think about our wellness, and not just our
right,
wellness out there, but also as a part of our institution, how we cultivate connection within the institution, how we treat people, how we transition people in and out of teams, and all of those different things. I get to be a part of that. And I think that's all work that I was doing in the world anyway. And now I get to have a focus that is specific
right,
to my
right.
identity. And I think that's the
Yeah,
most gorgeous part of this work.
I think so too. I mean, even just like as a writer here with Gay, you couldn't have told me at 16 years old, a girl from Jamaica, that I'd be able to sit down and speak with a collective like Beam about mental health, about queer Black mental health. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
definitely being able to sit, like you said, in the community that you exist in, it's such an empowering feeling for sure.
Mhm.
And I appreciate it. Thank you. We appreciate you. Of
Thank
course.
you.
Okay, so I guess this is probably going to be kind of like a broad question to ask, but um, what are some of your hopes for the collective? Because BEAM stands for Black Emotional and Mental, right? So, what are some of your personal hopes for the collective through your work at BEAM? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, how do you see yourself being impactful towards the
Yeah.
community?
Well, I think the opportunity that we recognize daily is we actually have the opportunity to impact our community every single day with the way in which we communicate with folks on social media and respond to comments.
Mm.
The ways in which we have freedom pricing, which means all of the pricing to all of our events are pay what you can. There's free tickets to every single event that we have. We have a corporate rate, we have a
Mm.
nonprofit rate. So everyone can be included
Right.
in every single thing that we do, and that we get to program in a way that we can talk about the most marginalized in our community and we can center them. And I
Right.
think that's something at many organizations you can't do, right? It would be to say, like, hey, this small 2% of the demographic, we want to focus on them.
And
The
then, yeah.
organization would go, why would you do that? And here
Mm-hmm.
we get to go, of course we want to do that, because if no one else is talking about it, or if no one else is doing it, that's the thing we most want to do.
Mm.
um, all the way to our trainings, the fact that at every event that we have, we're going to feed people. We are going to think about their wellness. We are going to give them things. And
Yeah.
that our team takes a tremendous amount of care and thought in ushering people into experiences. We spend a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time internally talking about how we want participants to feel when they leave our events, and then cultivating environments that will create those impacts with every single thing that we do. We wanted our podcast to feel like a living room. We wanted it to feel and
Mm.
model how we can be talking to each other, that it doesn't have to just be Yolo and I, that it could actually be our whole community, where we pull up
Right.
in the living room and we go, okay, we're going to talk about this. Like, what's up with this thing? How you feeling about this?
Right.
What's shady about this? Right. That we can model those things for our community, and that if and when people join us, when they leave, they are better, they are fed, they are more whole, they are more connected to themselves and the community. And that really is what our work is.
Right. And so, okay, so you definitely started to move into what my next question was going to be. So we are going to talk a lot more about the podcast. And you
Okay,
mentioned
great.
that you wanted the podcast to feel like, we sit in the living room, we're talking, we're chatting, we're having real life conversations about real world. Let me not say real world, our real world matters, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And so is did the podcast, was it just like a eureka moment, an aha moment where someone was just like, we should do a podcast? Is that what happened, or is it something that was kind of a little bit more thought out?
So it was initially an eureka moment many, many years ago. It was one of the
Oh,
things
okay.
that I said to Yolo after we kind of, were began working together, and I started doing stuff with Yolo. I started saying, we should just do a podcast. Like, clearly we have stuff to say. Clearly the way we say it, people relate to and connect to. We should have a podcast. The problem was we ain't had no money. We ain't had no budget. We ain't had no sponsors. So we were like,
Right.
we didn't know how to do it. We just were like, we could be talent,
Mm-hmm.
but we need somebody to put this all together, but we didn't have the money to make that happen. And so, as we were kind of talking about it playfully, we were like, okay, the opportunity will come if it's supposed to come. We're not
Right.
going to put too much pressure on it or ourselves, but if the opportunity presents itself, yes, we want to do it. And, obviously with me coming in house, with
Mm-hmm.
us, our programming evolving and growing, and a lot of the things that we're doing. We did this huge subway campaign in New York. We did a campaign on bus shelters in Atlanta. So more and more people are getting to know our work in their community. And so we
Right.
wanted to think about, we always want the work to come to where people are. And we were
Mm-hmm.
like, well, ain't nowhere better than it being on their phone, honey.
That's
And so we
true.
really wanted to think about, how do we bring these intimate conversations into people's homes, into their real lives, into their
Mm-hmm.
cars. So we wanted it to be a video version, because obviously we cute. So we wanted to give the people what they needed to.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah.
But we also wanted to make sure that we honored their traditional podcast space, but also could show the potential of, like, hey, we have a lot of talent. We have a lot of things to talk about. And so are people willing to collaborate with us? And, we're very hopeful that there will be many seasons of us being
Mm-hmm.
able to talk about this in different ways. But it was organic. And then it also was, we had the opportunity to be strategic and say, okay, what do we want to talk about and how do we plan it? And of course, it's a production. So there were, months and months and months of conversations.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it totally just started out as like, we have things to say and we want
Right.
to share with our community, and we're in the field, so we're learning a lot about Black mental health each day as we each are navigating our own. And so it
Mm-hmm.
puts us in a really unique position, that we're not clinicians, that we're just regular
Mm-hmm.
people, but we are people who facilitate and do this work in communities and have a tremendous amount of experience. And so really have a unique perspective in that we sit with people all the
Hmm.
time, and we know their
Yeah,
stories, we know what people are navigating, and also are outside of some of these systems, and so can have a unique perspective. And so, that's really powerful.
because also I would just like to say, to point out at this point, like this moment right here, the dynamic between you and Yulo is very, like, on camera, you guys are very, very, I feel like I'm your friend from the clips that I've seen, from what I've watched, from listening to the podcast. I feel like y'all are friends, y'all feel like family, and it feels very, very natural. It doesn't feel forced, and I really appreciate that. And I will also like to say, if you guys, to my gays out there, I don't know, I can only speak for myself. I love me some Meg The Stallion. And if you know, you know that she also has a mental health initiative, and her website, Bad Bitches Have Bad Days Too, features Beam, which is how I came to learn about Beam initially, and how I happened across your website just randomly. And so when I was told that we are going to be able to do this, I was very, very excited. I was like,
I
yeah,
love that.
I want it. It was great. So shout out to you guys, because it this initiative is not just, I don't feel like it's localized or centralized. It's getting out there. It's a movement. It's a
Mhm.
collective that people are tapping into, and we need that. We need that support, because as queer folks, especially, what we have to navigate on a mental and emotional level in life in
Mhm.
America is, it's it's definitely a unique journey. And so to be able to tap into a community that caters specifically to that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So I do want to ask, what are some of the conversations surrounding Black emotional and mental health that you hope to kind of, prod at or initiate or bring attention to through the podcast specifically?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for that. We're really appreciative of the support that we get. We recognize that celebrities and people with huge platforms can do anything with it. And so we're always delighted when they're championing the work that will help a lot of people. So we're grateful for, Meg shouting us out and adding us, and, Chloe and Hallie. And there's so many people that, have supported our work. So we're really grateful to them. I think, as it relates to the podcast, I think, what I always want to communicate to people, number one, is there's nothing wrong with you, right? As an individual, there's nothing wrong with you.
Exactly.
There are a lot of
Exactly.
things in our society that are creating conditions that do not help you thrive. And so it's really our job as the healers, it's our job as community members, as peer support folks, to be helping and encouraging each other. And I think that's the biggest thing. And to know that there is
Yeah,
no one strategy to healing. Each of us is going
for
to need
sure.
something different, which means that
Hmm.
each of us needs to know a bunch of different things, right? It's why we have so many tools and resources and a wellness directory on our website. We have all these different things so that people can
Right.
approach it however they want, but also knowing that there's a myriad of different kinds of healing modalities. Therapy is not the only one. When you look on social media, people are always saying, oh, this person needs a therapist. They need a therapist. And I go, maybe they don't need a therapist. Maybe they need to take a walk. Maybe they need
Right.
time in nature. Maybe they need a job that doesn't, make them feel like crap every day. Maybe they need living
Mm,
wages. Maybe they need a
right.
hug, right? There's so many different things that people might need. Maybe they need sound healing. Maybe they, like I want us to be people who explore instead of thinking that it's only about, going to therapy, because talk therapy is not for everyone. It's not for every
True.
stage of your journey. And on our wellness directory, you can go to to each state, you can put in your state, and it'll show you competent, culturally competent therapists and different kind of healing modality, a Reiki artist, a massage therapist, all different kinds of healers in your state that you could, support, but also learn from and engage. And so I really just want people to know that there are so many more healing modalities, but also to know that you probably are a healer too, right? When
Mm,
your best friend comes to you and is like, oh, I'm so tired of these, da 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 da, and you have a listening ear, that is a
yep.
healing intervention. That is community care. That is peer support.
Mm,
When you teach your niece and nephew, and you teach your younger people, when you teach them the ways you heal, you teach them, oh, here's the thing about aromatherapy. Here's the Epsom salt. Oh, I put the incense, or I use this crystal. When we do that, these are healing modalities that we are passing on to the next generation. And so it doesn't require us always to have to do something new. It might just be investing in a morning practice, right?
Right.
waking up 15 minutes earlier so that we can like sit with our spirit and really go, girl, how you doing?
Mm,
We are right.
mm,
Oh, that thing that's
yeah.
wearing on me, maybe I need to write in my journal for 5 minutes, right? And just kind of
Mm-hmm.
process things out, recognizing that we all are healers, that we all are healing, and the way in
Right.
which we might need to support ourselves are different across a lifetime. And the more we know what's happening with us, the more we know how we want to respond to it, and the more we get to choose how we respond to it. And I think that's the
Mm,
biggest thing is there's so many factors societally that are making us not have choices. Let us
mm-hmm.
not
Mm,
also contribute to us not having choices because we don't care for ourselves, and knowing that some of that is conditioned, right?
yeah. Yeah.
That black men have to be a certain way, have to show up in vibrato, have to be strong. Baby, if you need to cry, that's a
You
human
better
function.
cry. You
That
need
don't have
to.
nothing to do with your gender. That don't have nothing to
Yeah.
do with those things. If you are sad or depressed, there are things you need to process, right? And so, like, giving us permission just to be whole humans and step outside of the binaries and the boxes that have been created for us to have lives that we actually love, right? And
Right.
that requires slowing down. That requires investing in ourselves, investing in
Mm-hmm.
different ways we spend our time.
Yes.
And so that's really what the podcast is seeking to do, is give people opportunities to reflect, to see themselves in us, and also
Mm-hmm.
to know that there's a community of people working on their behalf, for their wellness.
You're putting a word or a term to something that we as a Black community have had access to for years, for generations, but we're not able to articulate that. You said,
Mm-hmm,
healing modalities is us sitting on the porch. It's us um, Epsom salt, the incense, the
mm-hmm,
lighting of a candle, all those things, you know, drawing on community, cooking
mm-hmm.
togetherness, you know what I'm saying? Those are all, like you said, those are all healing modalities. And I think for a long time, or to my knowledge at least, for a long time, that there we as Black people were not able to put that as a name, or name that
Yeah.
rather.
And
You
that's
know what
so
I'm saying?
important that you say that, because what's interesting is Black folks have been having healing strategies forever. None of this
Mm,
is new to us, but the
right.
language is new, because we just
There
said,
you
oh, that's
go.
what my auntie does. Oh, my auntie like this. Oh, my so and so. Oh, they do that thing, right? We didn't name it
Mm-hmm.
because it was just part of the culture. We didn't have to name it. And what happens
Yes,
when you step into the Western medical model is you have to name everything, right?
you do.
Because that's how you can commodify it. That's how you can make
Mm-hmm.
it something we have to pay for, right? Is you say, oh, this is a diagnosis, and so now you need to take this medicate, right? But there were things we were doing always, and that's part of our ancestral inheritance and our
That's right.
ancestral wisdom, right? Is that there are things your mama and your grandma and your auntie and your uncle and all these people
I've
did
been doing, yep,
that
throughout the
helped them
years. Yeah.
survive to get you here. Now that's not to say that what our family and what our ancestors passed to us is not, they're not imperfect. There are plenty of imperfect things, right? And so one of the
Right.
things that we say, take what is useful. Take what
There
is
you go.
useful from all of it. That doesn't mean we have to discard everything, but there are some things that our ancestors knew, right? They knew to
Mm,
hum and rock slowly. That's a self-soothing practice. Your
yep.
uncle and them who sat on the porch, that's a healing practice, right? That's a meditative practice. Gardening, that's a meditative practice. We didn't call it
Right.
that. We didn't call it a healing modality, but that's what they were doing. They were
Right.
soothing.
Right. And of course,
Yeah.
like you said, putting the language to it is so important. Um, we're gonna shift just a little bit, right? So, um, I don't know how many of our gays have listened to the podcast or have checked it out, but you do need to check it out. I'm gonna go ahead and spoilers ahead. I'm gonna talk about episode 2 really quickly. So,
It was a good
right,
one.
so
Episode 2 was a
yeah,
good one.
and I'm we're here for the gays, and I think especially exploring. Well, let me say the title of episode 2 is Remixing Relationships, Sex, and Intimacy. And I think, especially for queer people, what sex, what intimacy looks like, relationships look like, is very interesting because for a lot of us, especially as Black folks, we have an idea of what that looks like in the straight world, in the heterosexual world. And then when we finally come to our own, when we finally come to our, our own truths, navigating what that looks like is a
The
very
challenge.
different is a very different world. And so there was, a lot of themes brought up in reference to like that intersection of our culture and what sex, intimacy, relationships look like for us. And so I think what I want to ask you is, what is one harmful thought process or ideology that you believe exists, especially within gay, lesbian, trans communities and all the other letters, respectfully. But what is one harmful thought process or ideology that you believe exists, especially for Black folks within the LGBTQ plus community?
Okay, say that last part again because you froze.
Oh,
You said
sorry.
all the other letters respectfully.
Oh, and then I said, so what is one harmful thought process or ideology that you believe exists within the Black LGBTQ community?
I think it's that there's only one way to have intimacy or to have sex, that we have assigned certain things, you're femme or you're this, you're top or you're that, right? And then we act like
Mm,
that is the end all be all of something, like as if you relate to something, you can't like anything else. Or if you
right.
have a body composition that is a certain way, then that means you have to align with this thing. And I think when you get in relationships, you realize that that's not true, that like it actually requires a lot of conversation, but we
It
also know
does.
that we don't have good models always for that,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have a lot of heteronormative models for like how you do relationship and how you do sex, which those are whack too, just FYI. um
Agreed.
and and unhelpful, right? And so like we are
Mm-hmm.
creating the history that we will pass on one day. And so it's really, for me, it's about unwinding those things and going, where did I get that idea from? Why
Right.
is that the idea that it got to be this way? And am I
Mm-hmm.
willing to have the vulnerable, brave conversation to say, what is pleasure to you? When you say sex, what do you actually mean? This is a
Right.
conversation I had this week with a person I'm newly dating. And I was like, how do you define sex? What does that
Right.
mean for you? Because we all walking around acting like we mean the same thing, but we don't always mean the same thing.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
And thinking about how do we approach getting tested and like all of these different things. How do we have these conversations? How do we normalize them?
Right.
Because they are a part of the practice, right? That if we want to have the most meaningful, beautiful relationships, even if they're transactional, I still want them to be consent based. I still don't want to feel
Yes.
disrespected, right? And so, how do we do
Yeah.
that if we're unwilling to have the conversations or too ashamed or too afraid? And I think so much of this is shame based, and not having models. And so, let us be the model. Let us
Yep.
start a new thing, right? If it wasn't there, let us create it. And so, for me, it's
Mm-hmm.
about having pre and post sex conversations,
Mm-hmm.
trying to acknowledge, ooh, I'm afraid to do this. I'm nervous to say XYZ, right? But to be able to talk about it, because that's
Mm-hmm.
the only space that healthy relationships can cultivate, can thrive in. And that's what I want to
Yeah.
cultivate, relationships that I actually want to be in with a person
Mm-hmm.
who actually wants to be with me. And whatever the
There we
time
go.
and all that, that's secondary. But I want us both to want to be there and to feel respected and held in dignity in the time that we share. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is like,
Yeah.
there ain't the rules we think are there, they ain't really there, and we need to have way more conversation.
I That resonates so deeply with me because at the end of the day, it's like I feel like as a queer community, we don't want anyone trying to like box us in or trying to compare us to the not queer community. But we still, like you said, there's, especially when it comes to pleasure, especially when it comes to sex, there is still so much of like that heteronormative basis there.
Mm-hmm.
And I gays, I need y'all to be more curious. I need y'all to just be like, I what do you like? Does this feel good to you? Do you enjoy this? And also on the flip side of that, being brave enough to say, okay, maybe I present this way, maybe I give off this appearance, or maybe this is how you've come to think of me, but I want you to try something else. I want you to do
Right.
this.
Let's get
Yeah,
spicy, like, or
yeah,
I actually really enjoy this thing that you might not have read or might not have picked up, but that's what I'm trying to do today. Right. And like, do we
yeah.
have, first of all, do we have the self-awareness, right? Have we been curious with
Mm,
ourselves to know what pleasure means for us? Like,
yes,
I
there we
exist in
go.
a bigger body, and very often people are touching me like I'm in a bigger body, and I'd be like, whoa, whoa, honey, this is a gentle, little delicate thing over here. I'm gonna need that
There you
gentle
go.
touch. All this
Let them
hard
know.
touching and like, no, no, I don't like that, right? And being willing to advocate for myself, because if we don't,
Hmm.
we gonna end up with these unfulfilling fake ass orgasms that I'm just not here for anymore.
And we don't want that because again,
No.
we do coming into our truth, a part of that needs to be what pleasure is for us, what intimacy is for us, what that means for us being in this space, being a part of this collective, being a part of this community. And if okay, so I think a big part of, you said just then just being self-aware, or having those conversations with self and saying, okay, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. So I think a big part of that is also advocating and championing for your own wellness, right? And so let me ask you, what if you could paint the perfect picture of what that advocating looks like, right? In the queer community, as a black queer individual, if you could paint the perfect picture of someone who needs to advocate for themselves within that community, how would that look? What would that look like?
Well, the truth is we all have to advocate for ourselves, right? Because we are all
Mm-hmm.
responsible for ourselves. The world does not know us, and there's
Nope.
many things that the world cannot anticipate, right? And so it's our obligation and responsibility, I think, to say, here's what I need. And the only way that we can say that, and whether that's with our medical doctor, whether that's with our mama and them, whether wherever that is, right? Whether it's in
Right.
the education system, a medical system, whatever system, the only way for us to advocate is to know for ourselves what we want, which
Mm,
means we have to slow down enough to get to know ourselves, to fall in love with ourselves, which means we can't be walking around with the self hate. We can't
mm,
walk around with the shady thoughts in our heads about ourselves. They gonna be there, but you got to learn how to go. No, I don't need all that. Thank you,
right.
because this is actually a great place to be. I'm a wonderful person, and that I have the
Mm-hmm.
actions and the receipts to prove that I'm who I say I am. Right? If we're not doing that and we're just, propping ourselves up, we're in the performance of, oh, I'm a this, oh, I'm a that. Right? There's a lot of style and vibrato and that kind of thing on top of our personalities. And I go, but have you sat with your sadness though? Have you
Mm.
sat with your rage? Have you
Ooh,
sat with your disappointment? With the reality that there might be things you need to forgive yourself for,
ooh.
right? The
And
self
those are
betrayal,
hard.
right?
Those
These
are
are all
hard.
hard things to sit with. And
Mm-hmm.
if we don't sit with them, they're not going nowhere,
Yeah.
right? They just muck up the place. And so the idea is, how do we sit with ourselves? How do we give ourselves space and grace to contend with the things about ourselves that we may not always see as lovable, but we need to fall in love with? Because you can't pick and choose parts of yourself, right? There's
Right.
parts of
You
myself that
can't.
I'm like, girl, I wish you could stop doing da da da. And I go, well, this is part of this Natalie thing. So we gonna figure out how to make it work for her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so how do
Mm-hmm.
we do that with ourselves? How do we be loving and kind but accountable?
Right.
Accountability is something we only can do for ourselves. Other people can't hold us accountable. We have to hold ourselves accountable. And so I
Yes,
really think it's
absolutely.
about navigating and managing ourselves and figuring out who we are such that we then can advocate, because that process is hard to do when you don't feel worthy of being advocated for, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm my
Yeah.
best friend and I see myself as worthy, and then I go in these doctors offices and they talking to me wild, I'm not having it,
Yeah.
because I know I'm
Yeah.
worthy of care that's different. But if I don't know I'm worthy, that advocating is going to be so much more challenging. And so if you're in that place where you're not at full self-love, you're not, you're still navigating and trying to figure these pieces out, then it's having someone who will have your back in that process, right? Sometimes it
Yeah.
requires teamwork. You'd be like, hey, I need my best friend to roll to this appointment with me, because she's not going to let them talk to me wild, right? And so
Yes.
knowing that sometimes it takes community to get to
Community,
where we
yes,
need to go.
for sure. And I think, especially, let's be realistic, especially um, care, physical care for queer individuals, it's different. It's
Totally
it's
different.
it's a very different process. And then when you do finally, get the chance and you say, yes, I'm going to advocate, I'm going to champion it for myself, I'm going to go to this doctor's appointment, but then you have to talk about queer queer situations that you're in. I feel
With
like for
not
some of
queer
us,
doctors and they
with
acting
not
like,
with not queer
what?
doctors, yeah, I think there's a fear of like alienation there. I feel like there's a fear of not being accepted in the same way that someone else would be if they were straight, if they were heterosexual, you know?
Mhm.
And so, like you said, sometimes we do need that support system. We do need someone to be like, hey, what's going on? I'm going to support you through this. I'm going to advocate for you in moments that you cannot necessarily, advocate for yourself. And so, if you had, well, let me ask real quick. This is like the last serious question, and then I have like two more fun questions. Okay. Okay. So, first question is going to be, if you had to leave us, this beautiful, rich, Black queer community, with any advice, what if you could put it into 2, 3 sentences? What would you leave us with?
I have no advice, but I do
Oh, okay.
have love I want to pour into you.
Pour.
You
Let's
are
receive.
worthy. You are worthy. You are here on purpose, with purpose. There is divine intention over your life, and if you have not
Ooh.
found the moment where you like, yes, that means you are still on the quest. And every day that you wake up is another day that you are closer to what you are here for. And
Mm.
I want to encourage you to fill your life up with things that remind you that you are loved.
Wow,
If the world
girl.
around you does not feel loving, baby, we need new friends. We need new things. Like, we got to get where the love is,
Right.
because you are worthy. You are worthy. You are worthy.
Wow. I'm gonna cry. Hold on. That's, I feel like, I mean, I know this is not just to me specifically. I know this is to the collective as well. But I think, I think that's something that needed to be heard. I know I needed to hear that personally. So I definitely thank you for that. And I think this is also a great opportunity to say that, especially as queer people, we do have to take our emotional and our mental health a lot more seriously. I think we do need to know that, yes, therapy, like you said, is one aspect of it, but as you are also explaining to us, there's other healing modalities. There's community. There's massage therapy. There's walking outside, being in nature, and I think knowing that it's not a one. I mean, we're not a one size fit all. We're a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
spectrum of personalities and intersectionalities, and so knowing that mental and emotional health mirrors that in whatever way works for us. So here's one of my, like, I don't know if you could share this with us. Do you have any like upcoming collabs going for the podcast that you know
Ooh, you trying to get
that
the tea.
that might be exciting? Like,
Um,
tell us.
well, here's what I can't tell you the secrets, but what I can tell you is season 2 is going to be really dynamic. There will be a lot of roundtable conversations.
Mm,
And we have a bunch of programming that is in collaboration with our podcast that really is uplifting the conversations that we're having this season and also next. Will be part of what happens when we're in live experiences, which will be all over the country next year. And so we're really hopeful that y'all will follow us on socials, that you will show up and pull up to events, because we're working hard to create spaces where they were created and crafted with you in mind. And it will
mm.
not be the same without you. It's just the real, you know
Aw.
what I mean? It just won't be the same without you. So pull up. We have digital experiences, but we also have in-person experiences, and are just really excited to continue to dive into these conversations, to introduce you to more folks. Have been really revolutionary in our work. And it's going to be an
Mhm.
exciting season 2. So we can't wait for you to be a part of it.
Okay, whenever you're ready for Gay to make their appearance, just give us a call. We'll be there.
Ooh, okay. Okay. Let me put it on the list.
There you go, for sure. And you spoke about socials. Go ahead and plug in your socials for us here so that our gay family can go ahead and find you all on social media.
Yes, you can follow us at _beam.org on Instagram. We also have our website, beam.community. We have tools, resources, programs, all the things. Holler at us. And of course, you can find me at Natalie is Poetry.
Awesome. And then, so are you going on like a second, third date with this new person that you just told us about? Like, what's it feeling
As it turns
like?
out, it's giving, honey. It's giving promising.
We love
Um,
that. We love it.
I might have a date later. I might have a date later today.
Go
So it's
ahead.
going great.
You look beautiful.
Check
Yes.
it,
Go
check in
ahead.
with your sis in a month though. Cause the dating life it's a trying time. It's a trying
It
time.
is. It is. Natalie, thank you so much. You have been
Thank
such a
you.
light. You've been such a wonderful personality. And thank you for having this open, honest communication with us. And we hope that, through Beam, especially, our core folks can go ahead and, utilize the resources that you're providing for us, that the collective is providing for us. And honestly, I hope that we can tap in together soon. I think it'd be great.
Yes, I'm so delighted. Thank you for having us. We appreciate the time and energy and love and support.
Thank you.